And is it mainly, I mean, the frightening thing about this, and I know that there's been many, many tests now that are showing accumulations of aluminum, even in places in very, very remote parts of the earth, in the soils. And it's hard to explain why that would happen. And people should know this, that aluminum was never a free molecule prior to the World War II era. Aluminum, all the aluminum on Earth is bound into silicate. And so it wasn't like there are many, many other metals like iron, et cetera, that are in the seawater and zinc and magnesium, et cetera, that are free and biologically available. But aluminum was really not biologically available prior to World War II, prior to and particularly the airline industry. When aluminum smelting became very, very widespread. And then, of course, the aluminum got into our cookware, it got into aluminum cans, it got into food storage, et cetera. And we now know that aluminum gets stored in the brain. It crosses the blood-brain barrier. It has a high association with Alzheimer's and with many, many other brain injuries and other injuries. And so it's kind of frightening to think that somebody may be putting large amounts of bioavailable aluminum into the environment, spraying it in microscopic particulates from airplanes.
You're completely correct on every point. Thank you for bringing that point up, that aluminum does not exist naturally in the environment in free form, always bonded to other elements. And we now have lab tests from around the world, all of which contain some level of aluminum. That's what brought me into this fight. When I began to lose massive amounts of my solar power uptake, I spent my whole life trying to get out of the smoggy Southern California, moved to the Pacific Northwest, built this off-grid home, and was losing huge amounts of my solar power uptake from whatever these aircraft were emitting, which I knew could not be condensation, not to block 70 or 80% of my solar PV uptake on some days. And that doesn't mean there's an 80% reduction in overall light. It just means you have to have direct sunlight for solar panels to function. I began to test my precipitation, did not want to find that primary element of aluminum, but I did. I continued to test my precipitation. In the course of 18 months, the amount of aluminum in a single precipitation event went from 7 ppb, parts per billion, to 3,450 ppb in a single rain event. That's highly toxic rain. So much aluminum is falling in our region of Northern California. It has altered soil pH values from 10 to 12 times toward alkaline. Rain pH should be about 5.6, 5.6 based on atmospheric carbon loading. We're seeing now 6.6, 6.8 in some cases. We're testing the individual precipitation events, the precipitation that is very high in aluminum. It's actually pushing the pH value toward neutral. And in regard to where else that might be coming from, because that's a question people ask. Maybe there's some industry across the street from me or so forth. We know from CARB, California Air Resources Board, that when they're testing from the aerosols from China, Japan, Asia, there's nothing between us and them. And CARB studies do not show aluminum migrating across the ocean. Mercury can, of course, because it converts to a gaseous state, but not aluminum. So where is that much metal coming from? And a final note, your viewers, your followers can watch the world's most recognized geoengineer, Dr. David Keith, who works for Mr. Gates, works with Mr. Gates, works for Harvard as well.
It's about the fact, an uncomfortable fact, but it is a fact, that we have the technical ability to do this. They are all fast-acting, they are cheap, and they are fundamentally imperfect. There are problems of how you control something where an individual country can have tremendous leverage over the whole planet's climate, and where there are winners and losers in ways that really could be unpredictable. And I mean, not to frighten you, but I think you can imagine scenarios that lead to war.